Hi, I'm Ryan Kingslien, founder of ZBrush Workshops and author of Sculpting Realistic Game Characters, a book that's out now. Very important book for learning to sculpt in ZBrush. And what I want to do in this video is I want to share with you two really important gifts. Send us an email to the email below in the description of this video, and we will send you two really awesome gift benefits. I'll give you a hint down below. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my story, who I am, what I've done, where I've gone, why I've gone down these roads. And then I also want to talk to you a little bit about this book. The book is really important to me. Books, number one, are hard. They're hard to do, but they're so much fun and very awesome. And my favorite chapter is chapter 3. So I want to make sure that you are getting this book and that you are checking out chapter 3, Sculpting the Face. This sculpt was done with that in mind. Starting with the skin, coming out to where we're getting the bones and the skeleton and all of that. This is a very important process for understanding form. And this chapter 3 is going to have a lot of the information that you need to be able to sculpt realistic faces. One of the things that you'll hear me mention a lot, frontal process of the maxilla. So you'll hear me mention that a couple of times during this video. Anyways, that was the key to unlocking sculpting the human face, sculpting the eye, really. When you sculpt an eye, you don't sculpt an eyeball. You sculpt everything around the eyeball. So you have to be thinking about all of these structures and everything that's behind the scenes, so to speak. And as a sculptor, that's one of the challenges that we have. We are confronted with this massive amount of information, and we have to find a way to process that information. So they say, research says, that the human brain can hold 4 bits of information. So 4 distinct bits of information can be held at one time, which means that we can process really 4 sets of relationships. We can process the relationship between the eye, or let's say more specifically, the corner of the eye to the tip of the nose, the corner of the mouth. We can triangulate that. We can hold that in our mind and have that be a visual pattern that is distinct, that we can flip around and look through the model with. But that's about it. After that, your brain starts to break down. You start to lose track of things, and you just simply can't do it. And that's one of the really frustrating things that happens to people who are learning sculpting. You're confronted with too much information. Way too much. And unless you have a guide, you don't know how to process. And processing information is the difference between spending 3 days on something or spending 30 minutes on something. You'll find as you go through this life as a sculptor that you get faster. Every time you do something, you get faster at doing it. That's part of the process. So sports has this field of study where they try to study the engrams of action. And the idea is that a high-performing athlete isn't going to consciously know what they do. It's not possible. The conscious mind cannot operate fast enough for a high-performing athlete to perform at their top level. They have to build engrams, patterns of action that kick in automatically, almost like instincts. Soon as they sit down and they start to, either if they're a tennis player, the ball starts coming their way, then a whole series of engrams go and kick into action. Their brain or their eye is tracking where that ball is, and then now their feet are performing at a very high level. Everything's automatic. Feet are performing, the hips are adjusting, shoulders are back in the proper position, or they're getting back into the proper position, wherever the stroke has to go. All of that stuff happens automatically. If this was, let's say, 5 years earlier in their career, they would be thinking and processing and being a little bit more conscious about every step that they do. And when you learn, even when you're training, but when you learn sculpting, you are quite literally taking baby steps, processing 4 distinct bits of information at a time. You're processing things like the height and the halfway point. And the halfway point. 4 bits of information right now. Okay? Next thing you're going to be doing just getting rid of all that stuff, all that stuff leaves your brain. And now the only thing you're thinking about is the halfway point and then how that relates to the top. Do these guys, let's see, is the brow and the bottom of the eye socket, are they lining up? Are they accurate? Do they have a proper relationship? And then maybe the relationship from the outside to the inside. Maybe that's happening. And then you have to clear all of that out of your brain. And you got to come back down and you got to start to look at where the bottom of the eye socket is, which you have to find first. It's not easy. And then you want to say where the halfway point is, or not the halfway, well, kind of halfway, but you want to find the point where the mouth is, the corner of the mouth, and then down to the chin. So you need to be processing all of these, and you have to process them independently, individually, which means that over time, things are going to get off, and they're just going to start to creep, and you're not going to know why they're off. They could be off by centimeters, and your brain will see it. And this is the bane of our existence. We as sculptors have two things that we work with. We work with our eyes and we work with our hands. Our eyes are our critic. They're also the one who's talking for us. They're the ones not talking for us, but they're the ones who are analyzing things. So they're a little critical, but that's their job. Your hands, these are the ones talking. These are the motor mouth. They're just trying to put something together that works. They're just talking. They're not analyzing what they're saying. We all know people like that. They're just working. That's all they're doing. The eye's job is to talk to the hands. But it has to talk to the hands nicely. Think about it as a kind of a management situation. The hands are your highest performing worker. Your eyes are the entire management staff. If you see the hands doing bad things, let's say the sculpt sucks today, well, you got to tell the hands. And if you want, you can blame the hands. Just say, well, it's not me, it's the hands. The management team is great here, guys. We're great. We saw the mistake. It's the hands. They just can't get it together. But I believe in the hands. We're going to give them a second chance, and we're going to make sure that they do it right next time. So blame the hands. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do, don't blame the management staff. That's just going to create some problems. Because once you blame the management staff, then you start to blame yourself, then you start to internalize that, and then you start to think, well, I'm not a sculptor. Oh, I can never sculpt. Anybody can sculpt. Everybody can sculpt. Everything takes time. Sculpting is a language. You have to give it time. Just like any other language, you have to give it time to absorb it. It takes time to absorb it. You cannot rush it. 4 distinct bits of information at a time, you will learn it, but only at that rate. So if we're able to process 4 distinct bits of information, what happens when we start to experience more? What happens if we are looking at a face and we are having to process the relationship of the supraorbital margin, the overhang at the supraorbital margin with the cheek, and we're trying to understand how that works with the nose and the slope of the nose, and we're trying to place it with the corner of the mouth as well as the chin. We're trying to place it in relationship to the overall size here as well. It's a lot to process. It's too much to process. So what has to happen is we have to progress slowly and methodically towards processing relevant information. Process height, halfway marks, depth markers, things like that. Process just the general landmarks. Halfway point, it's going to be where the eyes are. Okay, and then we're going to learn, say, 1/3 of the way down for the nose. Where's the cheeks? 1/3. Things like this. You want to be finding these measurements, and you need to make them automatic. So when you speak today, or when you hear this recording, you're not analyzing every single word, because you do not have to consciously hold all of that information in your mind. Again, you can only handle 4 bits of information. So if you were to do that, you'd be handling basically 4 brand new words at a time, and that's not possible. So when you're learning, you're processing. When you're sculpting, that's different. When you're sculpting, that's when you are fluent in the language and you are expressing. Just like language, you know, when you're learning a new language, you can't say anything terribly expressive. You can't really express yourself well or emote correctly or give the correct tone. Same thing with sculpting. When you're learning, the depth is going to be off. You're not going to be right. The proportions are going to be wrong. So things aren't going to quite line up. They're not going to sync up. When you are fluent in a language, then you express yourself, you emote, you are able to connect with other people on a dime. Everything is simple and easy because you have all of this information in the back of your mind. You are not processing anymore. You are now simply accessing stuff that you've already processed. And at this point, you're processing more abstract things. You're processing the nature of a feeling or some experience inside yourself. You're not processing the words to describe it, you're processing the experience. And that's what's really important, because when you're learning to sculpt, it's very easy to kind of want to do everything all at once. You want to be able to create something beautiful, or let me say it this way. When you sculpt, you come up here, you bang around, you start to put stuff on the armature, you start to make things work as best you can, but then your brain is judging this. It is judging this from the perspective of a finished product. Your brain just usually does. Your brain is back there saying, oh, well, it's not that beautiful. Well, it doesn't look like Rodin. Well, it doesn't look like Michelangelo. What were you thinking? You're not a sculptor. You can't sculpt. What's going on here? You're interrupting the process when your brain starts to do that. So you have to remember that you're learning a language, you need to protect that, and you need to be careful of your value judgments. And so I talk a lot with my students about one really important thing, the valley of the suck. We all walk through the valley of the suck. Every artist I know walks through the valley of the suck. Sometimes they call it a bad day. Sometimes they don't even talk about it. Sometimes it's a burden of shame, or sometimes it's the first 5 minutes of every day they just suck for 5 minutes, get that out of the way, and then move on and have a really productive rest of the day. No matter how you look at it, no matter what you call it, everybody walks through the valley of the suck. And when you are walking through the valley of the suck, everything sucks. It doesn't look right. Something's wrong. You're not sure what's wrong. Well, the eye doesn't look right. The nose doesn't look right. So the trick with the valley of the suck, or the problem with it really, is that it starts to lead you astray. It starts to say, okay, the eye is off. Okay, the nose is off. Okay, this is off. That's off. This off. All it's doing is looking at something and saying it's off. It doesn't judge anything. It's not making any assessments. It's just saying something's wrong. You as a sculptor, as a professional sculptor, not just a willy-nilly amateur hour sculptor, you're a professional sculptor. Whether you make it for money or not, doesn't matter. You are here to sculpt, to make a living, to do something useful, productive, whatever. Money is not the only reason for you to be sculpting, but for you to be making something beautiful means you're a professional sculptor. So, as a professional sculptor, your job is almost like a Zen monk. You sit there, you let the frustration exist. You look at it and you say, yes, that's wrong. What else is wrong? Always ask, what else is wrong? And before you change anything, you want to just live with it, sit with it, and then try to assess what else could be wrong. Think about it very rationally. If the eye looks wrong, it could be its placement. If it looks wrong, it could be its depth. These are the initial things that I always assess. Then it could be, well, maybe the lower part of the face is too large. So it's making everything look wrong. Or maybe the cheeks are too wide, or the cheeks are too narrow. And if the cheeks are too narrow, the eyes are going to look massive, but the eye might be right. And so this is where certain research tools help. So knowing that the eye is about 17 centimeters, 18 centimeters across, if I remember correctly, is a good thing to do to help you know exactly whether you're right or not. Because you can get those measurements in ZBrush as well. It's not really all that much of a problem. But you need to keep these things in your mind as tools to help you. Most importantly, though, you need to not react. Very important. Don't react. If your sculpture sucks, which mine suck all the time. In fact, you can go onto YouTube right now and look at my channel and go back about 4 years and you'll see some really bad sculpts. But I like to leave those sculpts up there. There's one with a duck mouth, as one person commented. There's some other that were just 5-10 minutes, but that's no excuse for sucking that bad. I leave them up there because it tells you that no matter where you are, you can keep going. You can get to the next stage. You can always progress. The only thing that's going to stop you from progressing is if you stop sculpting. If you continue to sculpt and you continue to get feedback and you continue to be real with yourself and real with your assessment and not get overly emotional, you will progress. It's natural. You'll learn more, you'll see things, always be analyzing people, always be looking at the anatomy of faces and bodies and trying to understand what's different. Anyways, you'll walk through the valley of the suck. It will tempt you to fix certain things. You, though, are a professional, and you will resist all of those temptations. Instead, what you will do is keep walking. Just keep walking through the valley of the suck. Because the best thing about the valley of the suck is that it's a valley. It's not a planet. Eventually, you have to get out of it. No valley is so large that you'll walk in there forever. You might walk in there for a week. You might walk in there for 3 days. You might walk in there for 24 straight hours without sleep. But I guarantee you, if you outweigh it, you keep walking, you will get through the valley of the suck. Everybody I know who just patiently keeps sculpting, keeps trying to make this, keeps calm about it, keeps passionless about it to some extent, gets through it. Just don't be hard on yourself. Don't say, I suck. Or if you say it, don't listen, because you don't suck. You're sucking right now, but you as a person, I know you. You're great. Trust me. I swear. You're a great person. You're going to be a great sculptor. Just keep sculpting. And that takes us to a little bit of my story, because as I mentioned earlier, on YouTube you can find plenty of examples of my work not being, all the best, not being all that they can be. I've been sculpting on and off since I was 24. When I was 24, I went to the Academy of Art College in San Francisco, and I sculpted my very first cherub. It was from a statue in the Golden Gate Park. And I just took a chunk of clay outside with me. I started sculpting, started piecing it together, trying to get the form and all that right. I showed my sculpting teacher, Cedric Wentworth. Fantastic teacher, great guy. I showed him and he's like, damn, not bad. This is good, you can do this. I looked at it, I thought, whoa, I think I can do this. And I was confused. Am I going to be a painter? Am I going to be a draftsman? What am I going to do? I eventually even took a degree in poetry. I had so many different options going on. But one thing that has stayed with me through all of these years is this one moment when I'm walking in San Francisco, Fisherman's Wharf, and I turn a corner, and the first thing I see is Richard McDonald's butterfly sculpture. Heroic size, huge thing, amazingly beautiful. The pose, the sculpt, the energy, the sense that clay was actually, or bronze was actually a river of clay. It was this amazingly beautiful form that just solidified at the last minute. That made it all more real to me. Because if you go to, say, the Getty down here in Los Angeles, where I live now, or if you go even to Rome, although Rome is quite amazing, but let's just say the Getty. You go through the Getty, you see these antique statues that they brought from Greece and that were copied when, the French Revival, the neoclassical sculpture, the 1800s. When all of that stuff was going on, they're copying the Greeks. The poses are static, everything's kind of basic, everything's along very simple axes, straight up and down, sideways, or just a simple twist, but still straight up and down, or horizontal, but not a lot of movement. Movement came later with the Baroque sculptors, and that's something that Richard McDonald really taps into. But if you go to the Getty, you look at that, it's a bunch of sculpture, it's not very exciting. Sculpture hasn't been exciting from my perspective for a long time. Richard McDonald changed that for me. Incredibly dynamic, incredibly exciting, amazing control over form. That changed everything for me. So from that point on, sculpture was a major part of what I wanted to do. And, you know, life stuff happens. My younger brother passed away. And when that happened, there was about a 2-year period where I kind of lost touch with reality and I became a poet. Prerequisite of being a poet is that you lose touch with reality. So I have journals, stacks of poems, which you'll never see. But just know that they exist somewhere. Hopefully they'll come out in bronzes at some point soon. Anyways, I go through this period of about 2 years of that. I go to Prague. Have you ever been to Prague? Amazing city. I thought I had found heaven. I was never going to leave that city until my mother gave me probably about $60,000, what it takes or took back then to go to the Noman School of Visual Effects. An amazing amount of money. Anyways, did it, got into the computer, started to learn all of these tools, Maya, things like that. ZBrush was coming up. A friend of mine meets Meyer, amazing artist. He is talking to Pixelogic, he's talking to me. They offer him a job. He says, I'm kind of busy, talk to Ryan. I go talk to them, we're back and forth, and then I'm their very first product manager. And as their very first product manager, my first job was to create an industry standard curriculum, which I did with the help of Meets Meyer. Meets Meyer is a very important figure in all of that. And I went around teaching that to ILM, to EA, Ubisoft, all over the place, meeting artists and things like that. All of that accumulated to me being a resident artist and then eventually founding my own training facility, ZBrush Workshops. Our global company is called Sculpt and has massive plans to it, which I think you'll enjoy. But all of that said, I want you to go back 4+ years, look at my YouTube stuff, look at where I was there. And then I look at this sculpt, which is a little bit more recent, and I'm infinitely more proud of this. This is something that I was using, thinking about this book, Sculpting Realistic Game Characters. And in this sculpt, I'm taking the form on one side, trying to understand how the anatomy on the other side kind of fits into that. And this is a very valuable exercise. We learned a lot of lessons in it, always a lot of lessons in it. And one of the things that I learned was this frontal process of the maxilla. You'll hear me talk about that several times. I cannot emphasize how much that's the key to understanding the eye. I cannot emphasize it. Frontal process, a glabella, overhang, the supraorbital margin, zygomatic bone. Okay? All of these things are really important to understanding it, but nothing as important as that frontal process. And then also, if you go one step inside there, try to find the lacrimal bone. L-A-C-R-I-M-A-L, lacrimal bone. That also tells a lot about the human face, the eye in particular. Something else that was really important. Look at the thickness. See how much thickness there is from the skull to the skin. About 5 millimeters on the top, about 10 millimeters on the bottom. So a lot of thickness. That's basically half a centimeter and then a full centimeter of skin thickness. Break out your ruler, see how thick that is. 20 millimeters here, 2 centimeters. It's a lot. Your skin has a lot of thickness. And that's one of the things that I think we really miss when we are looking at facial anatomy, things like that. It's not talked about a lot. Anyways, all of that stuff to say that I want you to enjoy this book, Sculpting Realistic Game Characters. I want you to spend some time in Chapter 3, the head and the face. And I want you to tell me what you think about it. Tell me if you think that this works. Leave some chats in the comments down below. Let me know if this is a useful thing to you. Show me some images. Let me see some of the sculpts that you're doing based on this book. And then also don't forget to email us the receipts. The email link is going to be below in the description. Just email us your receipt and then we will sign you up for 2 really awesome gifts. I'm not going to talk about them now, but I will sign you up for them, give you a little hint in the description below. So happy sculpting, I hope you enjoy, and good luck.